You know, it's pretty hard to ignore when a politician actually does something that points toward more freedom instead of just wrapping us in more red tape. And that's exactly what's happening. Trump's team has put forward a new proposal that aims to restore gun rights to people with old, non-violent convictions, and it's making a lot of us in the gun community do a serious double-take. What's up, everyone? Today, we're cutting through the noise. We're not talking headlines. We're not talking politics. We are breaking down the straight facts of what this proposal really means for you, whether you build, sell, or just own firearms for your own protection. Before we dive in, if you get any value out of this, go ahead and hit those buttons below. The subscribe, the notification bell. It's not required, but every one of those clicks really does help a brother out and helps me bring more content like this to your screen. All right, buckle up. Let's get into it. Every single time a new gun law is announced, you just brace for impact, right? You expect tighter regulations, more paperwork, another right chipped away. But this one completely flips the script. The Department of Justice under Trump has proposed a rule that actually expands gun rights. And that is not a sentence we get to say very often. At its core, this is a federal rule designed to give a second chance to folks who lost their Second Amendment rights over a non-violent mistake they made decades ago. We're talking about that low-level felony or a 2-year misdemeanor that has followed them for life. For these people, this might be the first real shot they have at getting their rights back without having to beg a politician for a pardon. The proposal, which is being spearheaded by former Florida AG Pam Bondi, is all about redemption. It puts the focus on the crime, or lack thereof. It only applies to non-violent records. So, let's be clear. This isn't for armed robbers or repeat violent offenders, but if you've got an old tax charge, a bounced check from your youth, or even a federal hunting violation that's kept you disarmed, this is the kind of common-sense rule that could finally clear your name on a federal level. For the guys who have been sitting on the sidelines for years, just hoping for the day they can legally own a firearm again to protect their family, this hits different. It's not performative. It's not watered down. This thing has real teeth. So, the big question everyone is asking is, okay, who actually qualifies? Let's break down the nuts and bolts. The way the rule is written, it would apply to non-violent felons who served more than 1 year in prison, misdemeanants who were sentenced to more than 2 years. Think about what that covers. We're talking about things like tax evasion, mail fraud, maybe a bad check charge from when you were 20. Offenses that never physically harmed a soul, but still slapped you with a lifetime federal gun ban. Now, who is excluded? Pam Bondi and the team were smart about this. They took a scalpel to the proposal to make sure it wasn't dead on arrival. This rule absolutely does not apply to anyone with a record of violent or other unspeakable crimes, domestic abuse or assault, sex offenses, illegal immigration status, active restraining orders, drug trafficking charges. Basically, if you are a prohibited person for any other reason under the current ATF framework, this rule doesn't touch you. They carved those categories out very precisely to make sure the focus stays on non-violent offenders who have paid their debt to society. And one more thing, it's not automatic. You won't just wake up one morning with your rights magically restored. You'll likely have to go through a process. There will be paperwork, a background verification, and you'll have to prove you've stayed clean. But let's be honest, that beats sitting around for 30 years hoping for a presidential pardon that almost never comes. This is where it gets real. To understand why this matters, you have to understand who we're actually talking about. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the range or a gun show talking to a guy, clean cut, maybe a veteran, a tradesman, runs his own small business, and the topic of his collection comes up. And he tells me he hasn't legally touched a firearm in 30 years. Not because he's dangerous, not because he ever hurt anyone, but because when he was 19, he got wrapped up in a college prank that went sideways and ended with a non-violent federal charge. And ever since, he's been completely barred from his Second Amendment rights. That story isn't rare. I've heard a dozen variations. The guy who bounced a check back in 1982 to cover rent. The vet who got caught with a couple of prescription pills that weren't his decades ago. The hunter who messed up a federal wildlife tag and had no idea it would cost him his rights for the rest of his life. These aren't the people running guns or shooting up neighborhoods. These are guys who have built lives, paid taxes, and raised families. And they still can't legally own a simple pump-action shotgun for home defense. And what's really wild is how many of them didn't even know they were disqualified until they went to buy a gun years later. They fill out that 4473, think they're good to go, and boom, denied. And now they're on the ATF's radar. These are the people this proposal is for. It's not about being soft on crime. It's about finally recognizing that these folks never should have been lumped in with violent felons to begin with. Now that you have a face to put to the problem, let's talk about the broken system this rule is trying to fix. You would be shocked at how many people are federally banned from owning a firearm over something that wouldn't even get you a night in jail today. We're not talking about armed robbery. Hell, we're talking about lying on a government form or that fishing license mishap I mentioned. It doesn't matter if it was 30 years ago. It doesn't matter if you've been a model citizen ever since. Under federal law, you're done. No guns, no exceptions. That is the fundamental flaw in the Gun Control Act that this proposal targets. The law gives the ATF zero discretion. Once that conviction hits the books, you are dropped into the exact same category as a violent felon. A white-collar crime from the 90s is treated the same as a violent assault. That lifetime ban has destroyed job opportunities, made it harder to find housing, and completely crushed a person's ability to defend their own home. All for something that had nothing to do with a firearm in the first place. The system punishes people long after they've served their time, paid their fines, and walked the straight and narrow for decades. And this is where it really hits a nerve for me, and I know it does for a lot of you. We talk all the time about our Second Amendment rights, but we don't always talk about what it means to deny that right forever to someone who has genuinely changed. Think about this for a second. If a man can serve his time, get out, and be trusted to vote again, to start a business, to serve on a jury, heck, even to run for office, then why in the hell can't he be trusted to buy a shotgun to protect his home? It just doesn't line up. The system says your debt is paid when you walk out of prison or finish probation. But then it turns right around and treats you like you're a ticking time bomb for the rest of your life. I've shot with veterans and hard-working guys who have stayed clean for 20, 30, even 40 years, and they still can't legally touch a gun. No threats, no violence, just a piece of paper in a file that never gets erased. This isn't about letting criminals off easy. This is about recognizing that redemption is a real thing. And when we talk about rights, that conversation has to include the people who have already earned their shot at getting them back. The thing is, today's world makes it even harder. Back in the day, if you screwed up, a lot of things might get pleaded down, sealed, or just forgotten over time. That's not how it works anymore. Everything is logged. Everything is digitized. Everything is shared across a dozen databases. That one dumb mistake you made follows you for life, flagged every time your name gets run through a system. That's one of the biggest changes nobody talks about. It's not that people are worse today. It's that the net got tighter. Cops used to write tickets. Now they write reports that live forever online. FFLs, employers, government agencies, they all have access. And if that old charge meets the federal definition of a felony or a serious misdemeanor, you're out of the game. The bureaucracy just isn't built to give people a way back. There's no federal process to look at an old case and say, yeah, this guy is squared away. You're just stuck. That's why this rule from Trump's team stands out. It's not perfect, but it recognizes that the system has gotten way too heavy-handed. And it's not just about fairness, it's about common sense. So what happens now? This is what I call the waiting game. Let's be clear, this is not law yet. It's a proposed rule. That means it's about to enter the federal rulemaking process. There will be a public comment period, legal reviews, and you can bet the anti-gun groups are already getting ready to throw sand in the gears. If Trump retakes office and his DOJ pushes this forward, there's a real shot it becomes policy. But make no mistake, there will be lawsuits. So for now, here's what you need to do. Stay sharp. If this affects you or someone you know, pay close attention to when the public comment period opens. Make your voice heard. Submitting a well-reasoned, respectful comment in support of this rule actually matters. It goes on the permanent record, and it can shape the final version. Check your state laws. And this is a big one. Even if this federal rule passes, states like California or New York will still have their own laws. This proposal might open the federal door, but you still have to be able to walk through it legally where you live. This isn't a free-for-all. It's a shot at fairness for a group of Americans the system has ignored for far too long. It doesn't fix everything, but for once, it feels like we're moving in the right direction. And for a lot of good people out there, that's the first real bit of hope they've had in decades.